all the levels of tax.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're going to get started.
Everybody in the audience with one.
Okay.
So then I'll go into the sheet, get into it from there.
And then you're going to...
My name is Tanya Conrath, and I'm with the League of Women Voters of Athens County. And welcome to this town hall where we're going to be discussing Athens City Issue 1, which is a proposed municipal income tax increase. And we hope that this provides you with useful information as the voters. Tonight we are joined by 4 representatives from the Athens City government, including Mayor Patterson, Treasurer Thomas, Auditor Kathy Hecht, and Athens City Council at-large member Jessica Thomas, who also chairs the Finance and Personnel Committee. Thanks to all of you for making time to participate tonight. On behalf of the League, we strongly encourage you to make a plan to vote in the May 5th election. April 6th, which is a week from today, is your last day to either register to vote or to update your voter registration. And we encourage all voters to double check your voter registration information at voteohio.gov. Early voting begins on April 7th. If you want to vote by mail, you must submit an official absentee ballot request form. And if you vote on Election Day, which is Tuesday, May 5th, please be aware that some polling locations have changed in Athens County, and you can verify where you need to go vote by contacting the Athens County Board of Elections, or they also have a polling place locator on their website. And for those of you that are in attendance tonight, we have both a voter registration form and the absentee ballot request form on our table with additional information for you. Okay, on to town hall procedures. And the panelists have agreed to these procedures in advance of tonight's meeting. The panelists will have a chance to introduce themselves and explain their role in the city's finances and with this ballot issue. Then we will take questions from the public, some of which we received in advance of tonight's meeting via email. Unlike some of our other forums, there is no set time limit for each response. But in the interest of getting to as many questions as possible, I may intervene to move us on to a new question. Okay, audience members, and this is for me too, please silence your phones. And please, we ask that you remain quiet during the evening. To submit a question, you will see a pencil and paper on your chair. We ask 2 things. 1, please try to write as legibly as possible. It makes it easier for our question reviewers to review your question. And second of all, please ensure that your question relates to the income tax levy that is on the ballot. When you have your question ready, simply raise your hand, and we have League volunteers that will come around and collect your questions and submit them to our reviewers. And if you need another piece of paper, raise your hand, and a League member will be around to give you more paper as well. I mentioned our reviewers. Please know that all questions are reviewed by our League to ensure that they relate to the tax levy, as well as to remove duplicate questions. We will get to as many questions as time allows, but please know we may not have time for every question. Okay. Panelists, you have 10 minutes to introduce yourselves as a group and explain the tax levy. Thanks.
Well, first off, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this important town hall meeting, as you do for a lot of the candidate forums. So again, thank you, and thank you for running a really tight operation with questions, and we'll try to be tight with our answers and be as succinct as possible. What we're asking of the citizens of Athens is an increase in our income tax. Athens, like most jurisdictions throughout the state of Ohio, our general revenue comes from income tax as opposed to coming from property tax or from sales tax. There is a fraction of those that do come to the city in different forms, but it pales in comparison to where the revenue comes from for our operating budget here in the city of Athens. So we're asking for a 0.2% income tax increase, similar to the income tax increase that we had on the ballot in 2016. In 2016, the former mayor kind of launched into that, Paul Weil, at least got the operation started, because in 2015, we recognized that looking at revenue in versus expenses out from the previous 10, 15 years was not keeping pace with expenses, revenue in. We're recognizing that right now with increases in costs of materials, increased costs of healthcare, increased payroll over the course of the past 10 years. So what this means is it would be an increase from 0.95%, which is the current income tax for the city of Athens, up to a 2.15% income tax. Let me share with you, though, that not all 2.15 goes to operations in the city, and Treasurer Thomas is going to touch on this in more detail. The general revenue that comes in would go from 1.6 to 1.8. And even that 1.8% income tax is parsed out into different buckets that, again, Treasurer Thomas is going to talk about. He's also going to talk about the other 0.35%. Those come from separate levies that are out there. These are levies that some of them have, most of them, by the way, have time commitments to them, that they'll only run to 2030 or 2046 or whatever the time course is for those different levies that are out there, as opposed to the income tax levy, which will stay on until it'll stay on in the future. It's not time dependent for that particular increase. Some of the things that the city of Athens has already taken on since last year, May of last year, to be specific about that, is we have gone into a heavily scrutinized budget for 2026, to where, when passed by council, we saw an unheard of increase, and when I say unheard of, a very low increase in comparison to past years of 1.8 for our expected expenses moving forward, and the revenue that we would be bringing in, expenses going out when it comes to all facets of our budget. It went up a bit because of an unexpected but somewhat expected. We knew that there would be businesses that could file for substantial refunds, income tax refunds, and I think maybe Auditor Heck will touch on that a little bit more as we get on to this. But that, again, increased what our budget looked like in 2026 with that increased expenditure or expense. We also went into a soft hiring freeze. When we have non-essential personnel who retire from the city, we are not immediately filling that position, and in particular, if it's positions to where we have multiple people doing the same type of job. We're just basically taking those who are still in the departments, and they're working more with less employees in there, but still getting the job done in the city of Athens. The other thing that we've rolled out is an early retirement plan, which we have several individuals who were ready for retirement, and now with this incentive, which basically is giving them 3 months of health care benefit moving forward in time, or at least the cost of that, which helps them offset their health care as they were to leave employment with the city and retire, or in some cases, people taking jobs elsewhere. We're hoping to see some benefit from that. That won't go into full effect, though, until I believe the 1st of May is when that takes place. We're also looking at some other possibilities when it comes to health care for the city of Athens, but those are the main things, to where we have been very diligent about keeping our expenses in 2026 and 2025 as low as we can, and still get the job done for a city that's 11 square miles of city and over 192 one-way miles of street, and accompanying infrastructure, water, sewer, storm, underground as well. So I'm going to pass this off to the treasurer.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I'm Josh Thomas. I am the city treasurer. I put together these packets that you all have in front of your hands, or in your hands right now. And really, because tonight when we talk about income tax, we thought it was important for everyone to understand where the taxes go. I think that's like one of the biggest questions. So real briefly, just to go over these pages just so we understand, as the mayor already mentioned, we do have a tax rate currently of 1.95. But what's important to note is that the first 0.35 of that are all levies that were actually approved by the citizens over the different years. Again, 0.1 was approved in 2020 for street improvements. Another 0.1 was for our new swimming pool. That was approved in 2015. Another 0.1 in 2022 was for the new fire station. And then the 0.05 was approved back in 1996, and that's for the operations of this community center. 3 of those do have time limits on them. You know, the first one, the streets, it says right here, that'll be up for renewal in 2030. So that's something, again, that the citizens will have the opportunity to vote on. The next 2, the easiest way to think of those is kind of like having car payments or something. You know, they will expire. At some point, the pool will be paid off, the fire station will be paid off. So in essence, let's just say when the swimming pool is paid off, then the effective tax rate would go down by 0.1%. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, the goal is, you know, at the end of the day, we end up with this 1.6 that the mayor alluded to. We're asking to maybe increase it to 1.8. The second page, the next 2 pages really just takes, if you look at them, just try to keep it simple. If you take $100 of tax money, and then how does that break down and what's left over for general fund operations? And you can see what that's at the bottom. Again, I don't want to take up too much more time, but the third page is if we did pass this, instead of $100 of money, you could now say it's $110.26 in money. And again, same way that it all breaks down. The next page, how much are we trying to actually increase in these? And you can see the numbers and then where the money will go. What's important is the next 5 things that are in there, where it might say street fund, recreation fund. These are other ways that the city budgets the money. When it comes in, we, by ordinance, have to separate this money out into certain things, and this is what the money would have to be spent on. Much like the first 4 things that we talked about, we can't take that money and spend it on anything else. It has to go toward those things. And again, we as a city council approves these, have other divisions of how we do that. And at the end of the day, you can see the number that would end up in the general fund. Again, these are sort of self-explanatory. I would encourage, I don't want to take any more time with this, but I would encourage anybody, if you have questions about this, feel free to contact me. Come up afterward. I can talk to you about it later too. And then the last blue page is kind of what everybody really wants to see. How much is this going to cost? And it's a chart that you can look at yourselves, find your income level, and then when you follow it over, you'll see, you know, just how much of an increase you might be paying if this were to pass. What your current is, what the increase is, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I won't take up too much time right now in the intros. I'll hand this off just to the auditor, and Member Thomas can introduce themselves as well.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Hecht. I've lived in the city of Athens for 40 years and in the area longer than that. I've been the city auditor for 22 years now, plus this year's, and I was on city council for 2 years before that. So I've been involved in our local government for a very long time, and I feel very strongly about the job I do there, and I like to you know, treat the city's money as I would my own and not be wasteful. And of course, it's my job to track it and make sure that it all adds up. What we say we got from people is what's actually put in the bank, et cetera, et cetera. And I will say that we have talked a couple of years ago about this change in our revenue. And we could see it going down some, and as a responsible person, we all know this, we are supposed to, best practices, is to have extra money for emergencies and things that come up. Sometimes those are, you know, a dump truck or a major, you know, crisis somewhere around town that we have to pay for unexpectedly. Just like at home, you try to keep something in savings if your car breaks down. And so our little savings account has been decreasing every year. We have less money in our carryover to start out with. And so we started talking about this a couple of years ago, and Finally, last year, then we started bringing it out more publicly and talking about when we should do a levy. And so we did do this. We tried this last year. And so here we are again. I said something to somebody about doing it, and they said, "You're doing that again?" I said, "Well, yeah. We needed it the first time. We can't just not keep trying." And everything, we've all seen our personal expenses go up, gas. I wish I could tell you how many vehicles we have that run around for the city and the kind of gas these dump trucks, fire engines take. Everything is so expensive to run, and everything, all the prices go up. And the main thing that we do is pay our employees. And of course, it's the law. If you have somebody work for you, you have to pay them. But everybody wants a raise. I don't know who does what in the audience, but every year this happens. And we have about 200 permanent full-time employees, and then a lot, I don't know what I'm going to say, maybe 70 part-time. As you know, the swimming pool hires a lot of part-time people, and we have part-time people that work year-round then too. So anyway, we've been watching this. It's time to keep trying, and as you know at home, there's only so much you can cut. And
And I think we'll have more time to talk. Let's get through the introductions. We're already a little bit over.
Hi, I'm Jessica Thomas. I am Athens City Council member at large, and I'm the chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll have time to get to a lot of things you want to talk about with the question portion. How is the sound for everybody? Everyone's good? Okay. So to the panelists, just get the mic a little closer to your mouth. Okay. So the first question we're going to take actually is from the media tonight. Danny Kingston is here from the Athens Independent. Danny, do you want to go ahead with your first question?
Sure, and you were getting at this a little bit in the last comment, but given that an income tax levy failed just last year, what would you say to people who voted no on that increase, who are seeing this on the ballot in 2026?
And I'm going to repeat that really fast because Danny does not have a full mic over there. The question basically is, we had this same municipal tax increase on the ballot last year. What do you say to voters who voted against it and that are seeing it again on the ballot this year?
So I'll start us off. Last year, it wasn't the same. Last year, the ask of the citizens was 0.3%, as opposed to the 0.2% now. We listened to the electorate that said no. It lost by 2/3, a third voted for it, 2/3 voted in opposition to that. So we heard that this was too much at one time. We also recognize that a lot of individuals were coming forward and saying, my property taxes skyrocketed last year, and therefore that's an added impact on my revenue that I have as a taxpayer. Again, we listened to that. We reverted back to, as I said, the 2016 income tax increase. We know what that looks like over time, since that went into effect in 2016, that will likely keep everything in the positive for 8 to 10 years, give or take, depending on what our economy is doing across the next 10 years of time. But again, it gives us a good snapshot, look backwards at where we can effectively project ahead in time. So we listen to the electorate. We listen to you on a number of fronts. Cut your budget down as far as you can cut it. We did that. We looked at, again, some mechanisms that I already shared with you, the hiring freeze, the soft hiring freeze, the 0.2% versus the 0.3%. As we rolled forward, and then again, we're still exploring other things that could be done in the future, but that's kind of where things are at when it comes to that. So hopefully that answers your question. Yep. Anybody else?
Thank you, and we appreciate the media being here tonight as well.
Yes, thank you.
This next question sort of rolls into, I think, part of your answer, Mayor Patterson, which is what specific and real steps has the city already taken to reduce its costs? And what is your detailed plan if this levy fails?
If the levy fails, we will continue to look at some other healthcare reforms for the city of Athens. We will likely look at them anyway, but that's one of the things we'll certainly be doing. The other thing that we have really no choice in doing is, again, keeping the soft hiring freeze and possibly turning that into a hard hiring freeze, to where as people retire, that we will not be replacing individuals over time, which again puts a greater strain on those who are still working in the city at that point in time, because they're doing more with less people. And I would contend that people in the city of Athens, by and large, except for those that I've heard differently from, that they're pleased by and large with the way things have been going in the city of Athens. They're pleased with the operations they're seeing, with street repairs, with water lines, sewer lines, storm drain, with the workforce that we have. I was just given a really nice kudo earlier today on one of our police officers and one of our code enforcement officers, believe it or not. And they are doing great work. But they are being stretched thin more and more. I want to also add to this, if I may, that I think it's important to share that with the passage of this, if this passes at the ballot in May, this won't go into law for collection until 2027. And in 2027, and the auditor can speak to more detail on this, we typically see 2 tranches of revenue from our income tax coming in. Everyone's favorite day, April 15th, is one where we start to see revenue coming in for the city of Athens with the property taxes. And then we see a lot of businesses filings that happens in the September, October timeframe, or in October. The reason I'm sharing that with you is, with the passage of this income tax increase, it isn't like in 2027 all of a sudden there's this windfall of money that's coming into the city of Athens. There is not. It happens over the course of the year, and so we won't see the full effect of the income tax increase until 2028. That's why we tried with the ballot initiative last year to get that on in May, knowing this same scenario would be playing out. But if it doesn't pass, it's going to be pretty critical times for the city and city employees looking forward into 2027 and 2028.
Anything else? Talking about the income tax, how it comes in.
Right. I don't know, Mary, you said that pretty well, but, oh yeah. I forgot, my coach over here. And we do. That is how it comes in. We get income tax throughout the year from withholdings that employers withhold. But when people file the business taxes, it's only twice a year, and most people who, we all do the same thing, I think, who owe money don't file until very close to April 15th, and oftentimes need an extension to October. And so, yeah, it'll be at least 18 months before we see the full 1 year's amount of income tax come in. And by then, we have continued to struggle with our medical fund expenses. That's one of the really big ones that we have right now. And so that's part of the issue. And then the other part about having the money and where it goes is, all kinds of things happen. And so we just need more money. The times have changed, and we have all these other expenses. And as we were kind of starting off, part of the issue is people don't always understand, and I didn't really pay attention to this stuff until I got involved, but how our money works and where it comes from. And as the mayor said, People think that, you know, we do get some property tax, but not very much. And you know, we're not in charge of that. When the county auditor increases their property tax, that has nothing to do with us. And so there are several things that can happen, and why you know why we wanted to do this. And I have lots of paperwork in front of me done by different people to try to help explain issues. So I hope everybody will continue to ask some of the issues. I feel like last year.
Actually, let's get to some of these questions. We have a whole set
okay.
piling up, and I think
All
we've
right.
gotten a little off track from answering our voters' questions. So the next one, and maybe this is for you, Auditor Hecht, or maybe for Treasurer Thomas. What would the revenue from the tax increase be used for? Is the next question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can start with that. So again, it's kind of to start off, is the fourth page that people in the audience might have. You know, the increased revenue, what we would estimate that would bring in is about $1.9 million total. That would be, you know, after those first four things that we talked about get paid, those first four levies. Then it leaves us with $1.9 million. How that divides up is, you know, our street fund that we've already established, that gets 14.5% of that. So, you know, you can see on the paper $275,500 would go to street fund. The next thing was the recreation fund would get their share, capital improvements, we have transportation, and then our medical fund also. That's how we put money in the medical fund, would get a share of that as well. At the end of the day, that's going to leave us $1,377,500 roughly. You know, this is our best estimate on that. From there, it goes into the general fund revenue. And general fund revenue, as the auditor already said, 78% of that revenue goes toward payroll, goes toward employees. And that is the largest thing. We are a city run by, the mayor said, about 190 employees, and that's what it takes to run the city. We're an employee, you know, that's how things get done, is through employees. So a large chunk of that money will go to continue to support employees. The goal of this, really, we want to be really clear, is I think it's already been alluded to, we're not looking to increase anything. We're not looking to add anything. We're not looking to start a big new project. It's not like we're going to say, great, we got an income tax increase, and now let's go do this new extra thing. Our goal is to maintain this city in the level that you folks are accustomed to. Obviously, we don't have the biggest crowd here tonight, but if people are listening out there too, we've lived here, I think everybody up here has lived here for, you know, 30 plus years. We live here for a reason. We live here because this is a town that we like, and we like the way Athens runs. We like the city. We like the services that it provides. I think most people that move here have the same reason. They'll say, I moved to Athens for a reason. I moved here because I like the city. I like the services that it provides. I like parks and recreation. I like that we're a safe city. We have a good police force. We have a good fire department. I like that the city does take the time to invest in the infrastructure. We have fiber. We have, you know, we do have some aging infrastructure that we're continually trying to update. I've always got the general sense that that's what people like in Athens. I've always got the general sense too, and if I'm wrong, people will, I'm sure, will point it out to me, that in Athens, we appreciate a city that does pay a decent wage to its employees, that does have a healthcare system for its employees. I think in this city, that's something that's important to a lot of people. So again, our goal is not to try to expand anything, try to do anything extra. We want to maintain the services that you folks have come to enjoy, and maintain the town that you want to live in. That is the ultimate goal.
Treasurer Thomas, am I still on? I might be off. Let's see. Now am I on? Yes, okay. The packets that you produced, are those going to be available online, or for people who are not, weren't able to come tonight?
So if anybody would like, all you have to do, it's very easy. It's J. Thomas, and then it's at the ci.athens.oh.us. I have to almost see it to do it. Feel free to email me. You could actually email any one of us up here, and we can certainly get you this information easily. Again, there's probably extra packets here if anybody wants to take an extra one for a friend, but we can certainly disperse that information to anybody that wants it. Again, one of the points I would think all of us would want to make throughout this evening is, if you have questions, please just contact us. The last thing we want you to do is run around and speculate on Facebook or anywhere else, trying to get your answers in cyberspace. Come talk to us and let us give you the answers, the best answers that we can provide you.
It's coming on and then going off.
Yeah, it's about that.
Okay, next question. How does our city tax rate compare with the rates of comparable cities in other parts of Ohio?
Jessica, you have that in front of you? I thought you did. I'm gonna pass it to you.
Let's see, we've got a variety of towns that we looked up just around all of the state. Just in the general, we could go similar towns like Oxford, Bowling Green, Kent, and Akron. Akron being a little bigger, that are all college towns. Generally, we are right in the middle. We're actually a little on the lower end. You've got Oxford at 2.00, you've got Bowling Green at 2.15, Kent at 2.25, Marietta is at 1.85, Lancaster 2.3, Logan 2.0, Zanesville 1.9, and there's a few additional larger city ones. Most of these places are similar in that they might be a college town or have a college within them, but they're all really pretty much larger than us in the number of taxpayers that they're going to have available to them. We are right now just a little below most of them in the area, out of about, I think they have 12 towns listed here. And I can send this information out to anyone that asks also.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, can you give us a full, clear overview of the city employees' current health care package, including what premiums employees actually pay, the deductibles, and prescription coverage? And how much did the city actually spend on health care last year for the roughly, and this person says 186 full-time employees? And if you need me to repeat, let me know.
I think I got the gist of it. So I'll start. If I miss something, we'll try and come back. So our medical fund. Let's talk real quick about how the medical fund. First, how we fund that, okay? Because that's kind of an important thing as well. Our medical fund comes in various ways that we bring money in. Percentage of income tax, I showed that on the paper. Employee premiums, employees have to pay into that. And that would range from anywhere between $90 to $150 a month out of their paycheck that would go into it, depending on their marital status. Each department then charges a certain amount for each employee to go into the medical fund. It's $23,500 actually is what each employee then costs that goes into that fund. And then we have to sometimes transfer money from the general fund. As for the coverages, the deductibles, that's the part deductibles are what, Kathy?
$1,000 now. Is that what you're asking?
No, I don't think it went to 1,000, did it?
You've got the premiums up there, the deductible is $300 per family.
I'm sorry, I didn't have that in there. The deductible is $300 for a family? For family is the deductible. And then, other than that, then it's 100% coverage. So it's an excellent plan. The drug coverage, I believe, is the same.
Yeah, I mean, it is. When I have to get a medication or whatever, my copay tends to be, somewhere between $10 and $20, depending on whatever that medication is. So we're competitive when it comes to other systems that are out there. I also just want to add to this, because I think this is important. Given the location of Athens in the state of Ohio, one of the big things that we're always very cognizant of, because it happens, is the competition for employees, in particular police and fire, to where when you've got a system like they do in Columbus, where a firefighter is getting paid an outrageous sum of money, and a good healthcare system, we have to compete against that to not lose those firefighters. The same holds true with our police department. The same holds true with other departments in the city of Athens, quite honestly. So one of the things that we have to really be mindful of, like I said, is where are we when it comes to being competitive to retain and keep our employees in Athens, as opposed to, I'll use either of our safety services, police or fire. We put them through the police academy. We put them through the fire academy. There's a cost associated with that. And now this person comes out as a level 1, level 2, level 3 firefighter, depending on the training that they're going through at the academy, and they're of value. They're valuable to me. I think they're valuable to all of you, because they're the persons that are running into burning buildings when everyone else is trying to run out and save that structure. But they know that they're of value to in other communities that might be offering higher wages or greater benefits. And that, like I said, that's truly a challenge. And that's a challenge for a lot of communities, but Reynoldsburg is a great example, to where we've lost employees to Reynoldsburg. We have lost some to Columbus. And it's not inconceivable to lose them to Marietta or to Chillicothe, that also have interesting programs and interesting salaries.
Just to give you the numbers, because I know that was one of the questions. In 2025, our medical expenses for the medical fund were $5.7 million. And that was up from $4.9 million in 2024. The hard part with the medical fund is you have to understand, it's no different than your own family. You may have a year where nobody uses insurance, right? And then you may have a year where everybody uses insurance. And it's the same way with the city. It's just all dependent on, if we have an X number of employees that, maybe have a major issue, it's gonna be more expensive. But those numbers continue to go up. And the hard part with the medical fund is basically, we all see this every day in the news. Healthcare is not going down. It's not gonna go down. Nobody's gonna come along and say, hey, let's lower healthcare costs anytime soon. So that is why, when you look at these numbers, they're big. But, it's just the reality that we're in. As the mayor alluded to, we were looking at cost savings programs that we can do to try to reduce those numbers. But a lot of these things that happen to try to reduce those would require union negotiations, because we have 4 unions that we have to work with, within the city. So that's a big one that we have to work with them. Can we be hard on those negotiations? We can try, but at the end of the day, we still have to negotiate in good faith. So.
Will you repeat again how many full-time employees or how many employees are eligible for the health care benefits?
What do we have, about 100, between 180 and 190, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, the next question is directed to Mayor Patterson. It says on November 10th, 2025, Mayor Patterson said, quote, "The cost of healthcare is continuing to escalate at a crazy rate," end quote. The same is true for all of us private citizens and small businesses. Why should private residents be responsible for both our own rising costs and subsidizing the city employee benefits?
Well, I'm just going to go back to, simple governance. We don't receive property tax. Or a fraction of property tax. We don't receive but a fraction of the sales tax. The general revenue that pays for employees to include the benefits that in some cases keep them working for the city of Athens comes from income tax. And I will go back to my comment about that we have seen crazy increases in healthcare. I think everyone has seen crazy increases in healthcare across the board, whether it's an MRI for something that is a challenge to you or to me, or prescription medications. I will say this: our prescription group that we work with, they won't cover things that are related to what you guys have probably all heard about in the news and so on and so forth. Any weight loss medication, things like Zepbound and whatnot, they're not covered. They won't cover them because they don't view that as something that is health related. I'll share my point of view as a former health psychologist at Ohio University, is that your weight is directly tied to your health and keeping you healthy, but that's a whole different topic altogether. But when I say we, I'm talking collectively. We're watching the healthcare system as well as the insurance system to where things are just almost exponentially increasing with new advances in medication, new advances in technology for treating somebody. cancer medications are incredibly expensive. Dialysis is incredibly expensive these days, and those are all things that our healthcare system has to bear if an individual or a family member, because we insure the families as well, that we have to manage.
And there's another related question. It says, under the current union contracts, city employees are in a self-funded plan. Before asking us, the taxpayers, for another $1.8 million in taxes, shouldn't the city have a real conversation with employees and their unions about sharing more of these costs or switching to a health care allowance?
Just to address that, the answer is yes. We have to have these conversations. That's a given. I think as we move forward, and that's what we're already starting to talk about with the change in the deductibles and possible premiums. Anything that we need to talk about, we're going to have to discuss with our employees and our unions first to make that happen. I think everybody up on this table would agree that if we could wave a magic wand and go back 10 years ago, we would start having those conversations 10 years ago. But I think at that time, when you look at our healthcare numbers, they weren't that bad 5-6 years ago. They were holding pretty steady. But what's just happened in the last 5 years is they've exploded. The hard part for the city is in our own personal lives, if my insurance goes up or whatever, I have the ability to change it the very next year. I can say, I'm out of this plan, I'm gonna change something different. But as we've mentioned, with having 4 different unions and our non-union employees that we have to be just as considerate of, we can't just change on a dime, right? We can't just all of a sudden say, we're dropping this and we're gonna go do something else. We have to ease into it. So again, you're not wrong, like people aren't wrong in saying, hindsight's 20/20. If we could go back 5-6 years ago and start making more gradual changes, that would alleviate where we are now. But at the same time, we are where we are. So again, those are definitely the conversations that are going to need to be had with our unions and with all of our employees to be fair to everyone, and see if we can get through this all as a group. We're going to have to get through it together.
Thank you.
Hold on, let me have one more comment.
Oh.
I probably took too much time.
I would just want to add, I think the bigger point of all of that is there is no world in which we could cover employees with a health allowance. It would just cost us probably 100 times more. I can be very empathetic to the cost of health insurance as I, as an adult, all of my adult years have been self-insured. As a small business, we are self-insured for health insurance. I am well aware of the costs. But to tell an employee that you're going to give them a health savings allowance, you would have to give them $2,000 a month to cover that per person. And that would cost us substantially more than what this is costing us because we are a self-funded city for health insurance. So we are getting a better cost than if we go through another company. If we went through another company like a Blue Cross or a Ohio Health, they're going to charge a middleman cost, and it is going to cost way more, and we will not have people wanting to work for the city. And we would probably have a considerable number of people not wanting to even live here because if you can't work at the university, you're not going to get health care coverage. So while I would say that yes, we will be having conversations and we need to have conversations that would raise their investment in this on the deductible and the premiums, and we have to work through that with the union and make these very valid points to the union, the idea that we can just give them a little money and that's going to somehow compensate would be, would say impossible. To maintain a staff of even half of that and to not lose money hand over fist in that. The insurance world is a mess, and if you're paying any attention to the other entities and government entities, if you went to the Athens City School District discussion on property taxes and their funding, health insurance is hitting the county, it's hitting the school district, it's hitting every municipality, it's hitting private businesses, it's hitting everybody except for the really large people in the country, and we know that. We are not alone in this. It is every municipality that is feeling this pinch, and we all have to figure that out in a better way.
I'd like to add a little something. I realize I'm a little bit off tonight. I just got home from Baltimore today, and I needed a nap before I came down here. Anyway, we actually have been talking to the unions about healthcare costs. It's an issue for everybody in your families and for years. And we talk about these unions that we deal with, but we also have a large chunk of employees who are not in a union. And we can set whatever we want for them, actually, or council can if they approve it. But it's not been our practice over the years to go ahead and increase the non-union costs or their contributions to the health care plan and not have the unions on board. And so sometimes we've been able to do that before, and in that case, the non-union people will have an increase in their costs for maybe a year or more before the union approves it for them, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just really hard to get their contributions higher, and so the city pays for it. And as Jessica said, we know that it's far cheaper and a better plan for us to be self-insured, but it's still very, very expensive. The end of the year, we had the bills come in and we have to approve them before the money is released to pay the providers. $204,000 in 1 week for our costs, and it's just hovering around $100,000 every week. It's very expensive, and as I said, it would be very unfair to increase the cost to the employees that we could, because we could, and let the unions continue. They're not going to approve that without some other kind of incentive.
Do I understand you to say then that the union contracts and the non-union employees have the same health care benefits? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we are moving on from health care. This person wants to know, if the levy passes, will we be able to pay our lifeguards more than $12 per hour?
What the mayor asked.
Shannon.
You know, when Councilmember Fall was on City Council, I believe she had a proposal, and I have to go back and look at it, Tanya, because it was interesting. At the time, the individuals working at the pool, one, they had to be age 18, I believe, or older to be a lifeguard here at the city. And their hourly rate was like $9 an hour, $8 an hour, something like that. It did change to where it was kind of escalating over the course of 3 years or 4 years, to where it was going to go to 12, 12 to 13, 13 to 14, and 14 to 15. We never, because of revenue coming in at the pool itself, which is doing well, but not enough to cover everyone getting paid $15 an hour. We also lowered the age to where the age limit is down to 16. Which was great, because I kept looking around thinking there's a lot of high school individuals who would love to have a job getting paid $12 or $13 an hour and be a lifeguard at the City of Athens. So that was, I think, a success. I'd have to go back and look to see what their actual hourly rate is right now as a seasonal employee working at the pool. But again, so much of that is predicated upon the revenue generated with summer seasonal passes, family passes, things of that nature, to where there is revenue coming into the pool to continue to make it operate. We have, I must just say this out loud because it's the truth. You know, I really feel for our neighbors to the northwest. Nelsonville, unfortunately, their pool this year isn't able to open, and so we've worked really hard with creating reasonable rates, as well as the free transit on the bus to come to Athens and use the city swimming pool this summer, because there's a need for sure. But with that need becomes more lifeguards and the need for more lifeguards. So I don't know if that 100% answers your question, because I'd have to go back and check the actual rate at which we're paying them, the hourly rate that we're paying seasonal pool employees.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you know, Treasurer Thomas? I saw you doing some quick lookup.
1250, is that?
12 is what the number is on this question.
Okay, I think that's what we were paying
Is it
last
12?
summer, I think. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think that sounds close to right.
Yeah.
So everybody knows what it was like during COVID, and there were lots of increases in the minimum wage around the country, and we increased ours to not quite to $15 an hour, but it has gone up for the city. The thing is, if we have 12 level ranges for employees in the city for pay grades. And so the lowest one is someone that works for the city full-time, possibly in an office. But if you raise, we would have been going from about $8 an hour to $15 an hour during that, COVID time and after. So if we raise our lifeguards up to $15 an hour, and we have someone with a different type of responsibility and knowledge needed who works in the mayor's office, for example, then we have to look at their salary and make sure that it's reasonable for them to only make more than $1 an hour than a lifeguard, that kind of thing. So then you start raising all the pay levels up, and then that, costs the city more money.
On that, a similar question to that, we have another voter question, which says that on November 10th, 2025, the mayor said non-union employees often lag in raises compared to their union counterparts, and that's not fair. From the perspective of private sector workers and small business owners in Athens, isn't it really us who are lagging behind city compensation? Why should we be asked to pay higher taxes so city workers can stay ahead? So I think this sort of two parts. One is there a lag in raises between union and non-union employees? And do you feel like the city pay rates are hard for small businesses to keep up with?
So one of the things we did a couple of years ago was basically a true-up to where the non-union, we did a pay study, looked at it, and realized we have to do a substantial salary increase for our non-union employees. And it's, again, largely because we have four collective bargaining units that are bargaining every 3 years, which means we are at the table on the management side every year. 2 unions in 1 year, police and fire separate years. So every year we're having to negotiate. And the other thing I will share with a lot of our non-union employees, when I look at we have what are called pay bands. So we have, as the auditor had mentioned, we have pay band 1 through 13, isn't it, Kathy? The very top end is service safety director. When you look at those pay bands have descriptions of what the skills are needed for each one of these positions, depending on the pay grade that somebody is in. A lot of the non-union employees for the city are not highly skilled jobs. They're good jobs, but the technical skills to do them aren't the same as someone who's in a hole repairing a water line geyser when it's 4 degrees outside. That skill set is very different than it is for some of the other non-union pay grades. But like I said, we did a pretty substantial true-up to where we recognized that, with every union negotiation, there was 3% increase, whatever the percentage increase was for said collective bargaining unit each year for 3 years. Whereas the non-union at the time were getting, a 1.5 or a 2% increase, and we said, we got to fix this because this is out of kilter with a lot of the non-union employees, so we did do that as well. What was the second part of that question?
I think the question really is from the perspective of people in the private sector and small businesses, that every time the city raises union wages and then non-union people to catch up in those pay bands, that it's a burden on small businesses to keep up, to compete for employees, and that kind of idea. That then you're asking the taxpayers to pay not only their own employees, but then to pay for the increases for the city employees.
Well, I just go back to the fact that the services being provided for the citizens of Athens, that their pay needs to be commensurate with what the service is being delivered to our citizenry. Now, a private business that's going to be a private business owner's decision as to, what they pay their employees and what they're selling their product for. So, to me, it's not a true apples to apples kind of a question. It's based upon, the business structure of the private business owner, and maybe I'll divert to.
Now, it is a hard question, and again, as a private business owner, we do understand. But again, it's not really an apples to apples question. Each business, no matter who they are in Athens, they would decide their pay rates, and the city has to decide its pay rates. I think in deciding ours, I don't think I'm out of line in saying that we're in line with other cities as to what we pay, our employees. That would be more of an apples to apples comparison, I think. If you were to say, what are employees being paid in Lancaster or wherever, are we above or below that? That would be a better comparison. But it's hard, but I do understand the question that, if local businesses or local, other employees aren't able to pay their employees as much, I think the point is, what gives the city the thought that they should be paying everybody more? And again, I think we're just trying to be competitive with other institutions the size of ours. And I think, as the mayor has said, we're trying to pay people what we believe they're worth and for the services that they provide to the city. And we've already made note, too, that in some of our areas we aren't as high. Again, I think it's already known. If you compare, our police with maybe other police forces, we might be a little bit lower, but that's why we have the benefits, that our employees appreciate. So, yeah, it's hard to make that comparison really easily.
Thank you. On November 10th, 2025, the mayor said some services people are expecting now are going to have a shift, and shift is in quotation marks. What exactly does that shift mean? Which services might be reduced or changed if we don't pass this tax?
Well, I had already indicated that with the soft hiring freeze, we're going to have, potentially fewer individuals on some of our street crews in repairing the streets. We're going to have some soft hiring freeze effects potentially on police and fire. And so the services, firefighters are still going to get to your house if there's a structure fire. Police officers are still going to get to your house if there's an issue that requires policing actions. The street crews are still going to get out and fill potholes and repair water lines and sewer lines and all those kinds of things. But it's going to be stretching them further in terms of their own capacity. So that's the level of service where we're going to, over time, start to see some effects. We don't want that to happen. But if you think about it, because we talked about this potential early buyout or retirement incentive that we have, we have a number of individuals who are of retirement eligible age and just eligible, who if we were to lose 10, 12, 14 people under that program, again, I'm just throwing those numbers out there, we now go down from 190 to 178, 176 people. And so we're not, here's the thing I think is really important, and I think a lot of you recognize this, but when I'm sharing that number with you, 190 plus full-time employees for the city of Athens to cover 11 square miles of city, 192 one-way miles of streets. We do a pretty good job with 190 plus people. But as we start to lose them because we're not replacing them upon retirement, that's when things are going to continue to really start to stretch.
I'll pick a real easy one real quick. I think the easiest thing to think about when we talk about services, let's talk about street paving, right? The city has always done a wonderful job, I think, over the years of trying to do a lot of paving throughout the years. That would be like one area where we may have to say, okay, we're still going to pave, but we're going to have to be a little more selective on where we go from time to time. That's a very obvious, you can see it with your eyes example. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, our goal is to keep that level where you're accustomed to, that we can continue to do, if we're paving streets, that's just a simple example, we could continue to pave the same number of miles of streets that we've always paved. But if we don't have that and we have to cut back, maybe we're going to pave a few less miles and try to figure that out. So that's just a good, you can visually see it, example.
Yeah, and actually this next question asks you to do just what the two of you have just done, which is if the levy passed or not, specifically what specific examples wouldn't get done or would get done because of that. And I think you've just mentioned street paving may not be as timely. I think you mentioned that employees would be stretched, so while police and fire would still get there, they just might be overworked. Are there other specific examples by department? The recreation department is listed here of ways that those areas we'd see some changes.
So some of you may really like hearing this, but it is a lived reality. You know, just interesting show of hands. How many of you kind of adhere to no mow May, to where you sit there and go, you know what, I'm not going to mow my lawn through the month of May, you know, from environmental reasons or habitat reasons. Well, we may see in some of our city parks, you know, to where we may let the grass grow, you know, longer, potentially along the bike path on West Union or West State Street Park, maybe some other areas in the city of Athens, because of, again, fewer employees out there on our Gravely lawnmowers that are mowing in a lot of our public park spaces. You know, the other thing with that is it's not only personnel, it's fuel cost. You know, it's maintenance of that lawnmower, it's the oil costs. We've all been at the gas pumps lately. You know, the gas that we're going to have to purchase, even though we do it in bulk with Ohio University. We're in an MOU with Ohio University to where we use their fueling station down by Parking Services, which allows us to kind of almost operate like a Costco. We get better pricing because we're buying in volume, but that's not changing things right now. The costs of fuel are going up. So that's the other part of our equation as we're looking at things that are going on, is the costs are absolutely going up. The cost of asphalt is more expensive now than it has been before. Well, we have to buy asphalt to have street repaving done. The one thing I will say this, because this is important, potholes will continue to be filled. What we're referencing, though, is the remilling or milling and repaving of streets that have a score to where we know that street does need to be repaved. And when we do that, we typically look at what is the infrastructure underground. Well, there's water lines, there's sewer lines, there's storm drains, that rather than mill it and pave it, and then a year later that aging infrastructure has failed with a water line break or sewer line, which means now we have to dig up that new surface street and put in new underground utilities. We usually do it at one time, using revenue from the water treatment plant, or for the water fund, revenue from the sewer fund, revenue from the storm fund if we're replacing the storm drain, and the revenue that we have to put into a repaving project. We bundle it all together. But what that means is we'll be doing fewer complete milling and repaving than what we've been able to accomplish in the past 10 years.
All right, thank you. Final question. Why do you think the levy did not pass last time?
I think I mentioned this on the front end. I think it was an imperfect storm that occurred where property taxes saw a substantial jump. And that's, as was mentioned by all of us, that is a revenue stream where we have zero control. The city of Athens has no control over property taxes. That's mandated by the county. That coupled with the fact that we were asking for a 0.3% income tax increase, and I believe a lot of people were angry with the property tax jump. And, you know, we're sitting there saying, you know, no to the income tax increase as well. And I think, unfortunately, they got tied together so much so that some people thought that the property tax is that we have control. When I say we, the city of Athens has control over property tax. We don't have property tax. We don't have any property tax control. We don't have any sales tax controls. We don't control the price of gas or anything like that either. So it was just, in my opinion, in looking at things and looking at the numbers, that it was a timing of the ask issue with the large increase in income tax, or in property tax.
I'll add to that, and I'll obviously pass this down to you. All 4 people at this table have heard me say this too. It also didn't pass. We didn't come to you early enough. I don't think we explained this well enough. I think we were all used to, in the city of Athens, it's always passed, right? And I think we said, we need to pass another one. Our citizens always want to support us. We want to do that. And we did this panel, and we did something in the mayor's conference room. I didn't do all this last time, right? And this time, we wanted to give you more information, which is why, again, I'm going to just repeat my last statement that please reach out to us. Again, we want to make sure that if you have questions that we're answering in this time. That's just my personal opinion. I've said this as soon as it didn't pass and we had talked about putting it back on. I said, we just got to do a better job. We need to do a better job talking to you, getting in front of you, and answering your questions. Maybe you won't like our answers, but at least we need to talk to you about it so that you're aware of what's going on. You got anything you want to say before closing?
I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconception out there, and there were some things going around by people that just weren't quite accurate. And then there's always a contingency, and I hear this, regularly. People who don't live in the city but work here and have to pay our taxes, they can't vote on, and so they don't like that. And there's a lot of people who agree with that, and we just don't get. People, I don't blame them. I don't like all the taxes that we pay either, but we work under the laws of Ohio, the way we have to. But, there was talk about a large refund from a business last year that we got at the end of the year, and why we didn't know that was coming, and there's really no way to know that. Businesses take losses and they average out those losses from one year to the next. When the next year, when they get, when they have an increase in their revenue, they can take some of those losses and things like that. They have 5 years to use up, losses, and that, of course, restarts every time they report losses and things like that. So that's just. Our bookkeeping and tax collections are sort of complicated, and there's no reason that most of the people in the city should understand how that works. But no, there is no way that we can predict what businesses are going to apply for large refunds from one year to the next. I think the mayor's done a really good job trying to bring businesses in. Marietta Memorial came last year. And those are mostly high salary compensation there, and that helps us. And I don't know, do you guys have any other things that you can think of?
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. And that is the final question for tonight's town hall. Please join me, if you will, in thanking these elected officials for participating tonight. We also want to thank the public and the people in this room for submitting thoughtful questions, and for those of you online for tuning in to learn more about the income tax levy. Our thanks also goes to the City of Athens Government Channel staff, which is Ryan Schwartzoff and Jason Judas, as well as WOUB for recording this event. And please know that this recording will be viewable on the city's sites as well as our league channels as well. That concludes the evening. Thank you and good night.